we're talking 49ers football on the Ourlads Football Network, Ourlads Football YouTube channel. And whenever we talk about the San Francisco 49ers, we bring in Kyle Madson from the Niners Wire, NinersWire.com. How's it going, Kyle?
Doing great, Greg. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. It's a great time of year.
Yeah.
You know, it's playoffs and national championship games and so much else just kind of coming soon, including, of course, the offseason for fan bases such as the 49ers. They had to endure what has been really going on for quite a while now, unless you're Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady. It's something called the Super Bowl curse, where whoever loses the Super Bowl the very next year has a hard time getting back for whatever reason. And that's what happened to San Francisco. Tons of injuries. And really, when we talked before the season began, and I want to get an update, of course, on you, because this is important. All of this stuff that was starting to happen with contracts and, of course, the whole Brandon Ayuk deal. And then we saw some issues, late in the year with players and things of that nature. I know Trent had a personal tragedy, and it just seemed like there was just so many off the field things going on with this team this season.
Yeah, that's what, everybody, people ask what led to their 6-11 record. Is it just the injuries? The injuries played a key part for sure. Breaking news for people: having Christian McCaffrey is better than not having him, and having Brandon Ayuk is better than not having him. But it goes back to training camp and all that stuff we were talking about before the year. Brandon Ayuk ended up not being in camp until late August. Trent Williams, same deal. Because of contract disputes. And when you have two of your best players missing for that much time, plus they dealt with injuries in training camp, there were questions about what Christian McCaffrey had going on. They just, from the jump, had a tumultuous start to the year on top of the Super Bowl hangover thing. I think that's really real. And for this San Francisco team specifically, it's like Super Bowl's hangover, because you had the 2019 season. 2020 was kind of a mess because of the injury stuff, but then 2021 NFC title game loss, 2022 NFC title game loss, and in brutal fashion. 22, Purdy gets hurt. 21, you had Jaquiski Tartt dropping what would have been an interception that might have won him the game, it down there in LA. And then in 2023, you have a lead against the Chiefs in overtime, and you have a 4th and 1 chance to get a stop and win the Super Bowl, and you lose. It's a brutal stretch for San Francisco just mentally. And I think what we saw this year was they started losing a couple close games, and they just didn't have the mental edge to right the ship in time to make any kind of playoff push. And then you add in the injury stuff, and you get a 6-11 team that probably should have been in the playoffs.
Well, yeah, especially in this division. The Rams started 1-4, and it just looked like, well, you don't have to worry about them. And then all of a sudden, a couple months later, they're actually running away with it against San Francisco, and just shows you what a crazy season it was in the NFC West. Back and forth, too. It looked like Arizona was going to take advantage, and then Seattle, and then it was the Rams. And so it was a real crazy situation. But that's what happens when the top team in the division falters. Then all of a sudden, who's going to take that division? And it turned out to be the Rams. Okay, so start with the personal deal, meaning, of course, free agency and potential cuts or things of that nature. Usually I start off with the coaching questions, but this is such a big deal with the Niners, and that's why we started off with it. So is there anyone, give me some players, some big name players who you think may not be back or could be traded?
So free agents who may not return, I'm looking at Travarius Ward. Sounds like he won't be back. And he obviously had the personal tragedy, the loss of his daughter. And he even said at locker room cleanout day that there's so much trauma for him in California that he just may not want to come back for that, having nothing to do with finances. He just doesn't want to be in California anymore, which would make a lot of sense. He endured the most horrific thing a parent can endure, and then came back to try and play football. I get why he would want to get away.
Sure.
Greenlaw is another one who's fascinating.
Okay.
He played 2 games. He only played 3 snaps in one of those games because of a calf injury as he came back from the Achilles tear. So I'm really interested to see what happens there. But the 49ers can't afford to pay him a ton, so that's going to depend on his market. And then the other really big name is Deebo Samuel. I'm super interested to see what happens with him. Javon Hargrave too looks like he's going to be out the door. The Niners restructured his deal, so he'll be a free agent on March 14th when free agency opens. But Deebo's the interesting one because he was not good this year, and that goes to the traditional box score stats. But then when you go look at analytics of broken tackles and explosive plays and all that jazz, he was not effective. He had one really good game at the end of the season against Miami where he looked like kind of vintage Deebo. And beyond that, before and after that, he just wasn't the same player. So I don't know if he's hurt or if he's dealing with complications of the pneumonia he had in week 7 that knocked him that game. But he just wasn't as effective, and they're paying him a lot of money. And if there's a team out there that says, hey, we'll give you a 4th-round pick for Deebo Samuel, I think the 49ers will probably take it. But on the other hand, they love Deebo. And he is a leader on their team, and he's a player that they like to have around. So I don't think they're looking to give him away. I don't think they're looking to cut him. But if there's some wide receiver needy team, if the Patriots, for example, identify Deebo Samuel as the guy they think is really going to help Drake May take the next step next year, then maybe they'll be willing to part with a pick that the 49ers will be willing to take for him. But that's the one I'm really interested to see because that dynamic's interesting.
So Deebo, but so how would it work with this contract? Because that would be tricky. Or would they have to eat up a lot of money there?
Yeah, and that's kind of part of it. So it's a matter of, do you just cut ties now and just eat that money?
Yeah,
I forget the exact dollar amount on it. They can also cut him as a post June 1 cut and save a little money now and spread out the dead cap hit over a couple of years. But you're right, it's expensive to trade him. And that's where I kind of think that if they view this year as a reset year, where you try and compete and you're trying to go to the playoffs, but really you're setting up your roster for the next 5 years, then maybe they look to move on from them. But it's just the way Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch talked about it after the year kind of makes me think that Deebo is going to be around. And I don't think the Brandon Ayuk injury helps that situation either, because I don't know exactly when he's going to be back, and I don't think the 49ers want to let a good wide receiver get out the door.
Yeah, because you could understand, like, if there's like a really big problem with a player, and you know what, if we got to eat whatever it is, the contract situation here on this website says 30 million dead money. Mm-hmm. So again, not sure exactly what they'd be totally eating, but it seems to me that, well, you don't do that unless the player is like a real problem. Exactly. And I don't think he's a real problem, right? So that would be one of those strange situations that I don't know. Again, I'm not there, but maybe it is. Maybe it is a bigger problem than I'm imagining.
Yeah, no, I don't. He did the tweet at the end of the year talking about he's not struggling, he's just not getting the ball, and then
didn't he say that last year or a couple of years ago, or mention that like at one time? No,
not that I remember.
Okay,
he might have, but it's never been a huge deal before with him being, he had a situation in a playoff game where he told Kyle Shanahan after a turnover, like, get me the ball. And so Shanahan did, and he scored a touchdown.
That's okay.
But yeah, he went on social media and said that, and then dropped what should have been a touchdown against the Rams in a game they lost 12-6. So it was kind of but I don't think that was a huge deal internally as much as it was, radio and podcast fodder. So you're right. It's not like he's an issue for them, but if they view 2025 as try and compete, but really try and set themselves up financially for the Brock Purdy era, then I could see them going that direction of letting him go.
And the Ayuk thing, again, the injury, terrible, bad timing, and all of that. But is that just fine now? He's there, and
I wouldn't say it's fine. He's at the facility. He's rehabbing. He hasn't had any setbacks. He had an ACL, an MCL, and then like additional damage. So I don't know if he's just back and ready to go by week 1, if he's back during training camp. I have no idea, but given the investment they have in him, I don't think they're going to do anything to rush him back in where they risk him re-injuring that and missing basically another full year. So I have no idea what the timeline is. They haven't given a timeline just yet.
Okay.
There haven't been any setbacks. He had surgery that was successful. He's going through the rehab process, which is about as good a news as you can ask for right now.
Okay. And then you think that's it as far as big name players, or are there? I mean, Leonard Floyd. They weren't very happy with him this year, right?
Yeah, but they also don't. They don't have any pass rush. I imagine Leonard Floyd's going to be around. If for no other reason, then they just need players who can adequately reach the passer. Their defensive line needs a pretty dramatic overhaul.
Okay.
And they just need talent. They need bodies. And so maybe they let Leonard Floyd go. But the only way I see them doing that is if they're bringing in 1 or 2 players that they feel really, really great about being, 9-10 sack guys.
Yeah, the only other guy I'm looking at for potential cap casualty, could be Gross Matos, and I thought he was overpaid to begin with. I'm not sure how happy they were with him, but again, he's another defensive lineman. I know he's not a pass rusher, but look, I guess they liked something about him. So, was he better than I think he was? Or
he was okay. He dealt with injuries a lot, and so that'll factor into the decision for sure. Because, like you said, he wasn't awesome, not super productive. But I don't know how much of that was because he got hurt in the preseason and then tried to play through it and then had to go on IR with anything. But they like those versatile defensive linemen who can play on the edge in run downs and then kick inside and rush the passer from the interior. I wouldn't be shocked if they gave him another year to try and figure that out. But it wouldn't be the end of the world or anything if they wind up letting him go. I don't think their hopes and dreams ride on Yetur Gross-Matos.
Yeah. By the way, this is I'm going to be popping this up quite a bit during this interview. This is the Ourlads, the latest draft. And by the way, we have a link in the description for this as well. Their depth chart. And you can see that there's a coded system here. So the unrestricted free agents are in green. And we're going to get to some of these in a little bit. And back on Greenlaw. So you think that's just a big question mark. You're not sure whether or not they're going to bring him back.
I know they'd love to bring him back.
Okay.
But it's just going to be a matter of it. Then Talanoa Hufanga is another name I didn't mention. I think he's probably gone too, just because I think he's going to get more money than they're going to want to pay for a safety. But yeah, Greenlaw, I think it's less about what the 49ers want and more about what his market is.
Got it.
If he's going to go get, top 10 linebacker money, I don't think the Niners are going to pay it. But if it's going to be really middle of the road, I imagine they do.
Okay. So basically Greenlaw and Hufanga are the 2 guys that they'd like to bring back, but they probably won't be able to afford.
Yeah. And Hufanga specifically, he's a fine player. He's okay, but I don't see him as irreplaceable.
Okay.
And so I'm interested to see how they view him when it comes to free agency, because you've got Jair Brown there, and Jair Brown was a 3rd round pick in 2023. Who was supposed to take over there. And then they drafted Malik Mustafa in the 4th round last year. Mustafa's already better than Jair Brown. And Brown really struggled when he did play this year. So that'll be a spot to watch in free agency and in the draft to see just how happy the 49ers are with Jair Brown.
And we're going to, real shortly, we're going to be getting into draft needs, and I'm going to grill Kyle here to give me San Francisco's top off-season needs. And the reason is, of course, because we're getting ready to prepare, or at least I am. I'm getting ready to prepare for the draft. And this is the Ourlads draft guide, last year's. So we'll have this year's out sometime in early March. We'll have a link in the description. So if you would like to purchase the draft guide, and if you're watching this video, I can't imagine why you wouldn't. This is the most awesome draft guide out there on the market today. And I need to get as much education as possible with all 32 teams, and insiders, OFN insiders like Kyle helped me tremendously talking about teams like the San Francisco 49ers. So I appreciate that, of course, as always, Kyle. Let's talk now about the coaches, and then we're going to go all into the players here. So what are they looking at right now? What openings are there? And how possible is it that Robert Saleh returns?
So we'll start with the defensive coordinator, because that's the big one. It sounds like, from what I'm understanding and just kind of reading between the lines and reporting, and Matt Barrows of The Athletic actually reported on Friday that Robert Saleh is like the number one top option. That's kind of been understood for a while. But he's like the number one option. The Niners are ready to give him an offer. And I think the only thing stopping that reunion from happening is if Saleh gets a head coaching job. And then if they don't get Saleh, it sounds like they want to pivot to Jeff Ulbrich, who is former 49ers linebacker, who was Robert Saleh's defensive coordinator in New York.
Okay.
So it sounds like that's kind of their plan, got a very narrow focus. I don't know how much I love that for them, but that's, that's what it looks like. So Nick Sorensen, their former defensive coordinator who got fired, Matt Barrows also reported that, also on Friday, that he's the front runner to be the special teams coordinator because they fired their special teams coordinator after last year.
Okay.
So that's kind of interesting to keep an eye on. The Niners special teams was a disaster all year. The other one that's very strange is offensive coordinator. So they haven't had one since 2021 when Mike McDaniel got promoted to that spot. Kyle Shanahan announced at his end of season press conference a couple weeks ago that Clay Kubiak, Gary Kubiak's kid, Clint Kubiak's brother, would be promoted to OC, and that he's basically been the OC. He's going to have all the same duties. He just now is going to have the title and the pay of an OC.
Okay.
Well, it turns out, Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports pointed this out, that you can't do that in the NFL. You can't just promote somebody to a coordinator position that was previously closed. So now the 49ers are having to interview offensive coordinator candidates, even though they know who their offensive coordinator is.
This is so silly.
So they've only announced one interview. I honestly, no disrespect intended, don't remember the guy's name. He's a passing game coordinator at Iowa State. I think he coached Trey Lance for a little bit at North Dakota State. So they interviewed him. That's the only interview they've announced. And my guess is that was more exploratory to see if they want to hire him for a different position. And anybody they interview for the OC job, it's either a favor for somebody, or getting an internal candidate some experience in the interview process.
Yep.
Or what they did with Brandon Staley last year. They interviewed Brandon Staley for their defensive coordinator position, knowing they probably weren't going to hire him as their DC, but they wound up hiring him as the assistant head coach on the defensive side. So that may be something they do too. But Clay Kubiak's going to be their offensive coordinator. He's not going to call plays, but they're going to be announcing interviews for that, even though the interviews are ceremonial.
All right. Well, that's quite a bit of coaching movement, at least at the top part with Shanahan, of course, the only sure thing there. And I was quite surprised to hear that Saleh was getting a potential opportunity. I hear Jacksonville is one of them, maybe the only, I don't know.
Dallas and the Raiders as well.
And now the Dallas job is open. Yeah. And the Raiders. So look, he's a magnetic individual. There's no question about it. But if Saleh is going to be a head coach, the first thing that has to be done before you hire him is, what are you doing on offense? Because he completely blew that. And that's the reason he lost his job with the Jets. He just had no idea what he was doing on offense. So anyway, but I'm sure 49er fans would love to have him back. And that would be a huge upgrade, no question.
Yeah, and he knows the star players. He knows what they're looking to do defensively. The Jets had a like you said, the offense was a mess, but defensively they were really good while Saleh was there, and not so good after he left.
Which doesn't say much about Ulbrich. Yep. Yeah,
no, that's tough look for our guy Jeff. But yeah, no, man, I think that would be a welcome reunion, especially since the Steve Wilks era. Steve Wilks is a good coordinator. Don't get my words wrong here. I think Steve Wilks is a good defensive coordinator. For whatever reason, his defensive philosophy didn't jibe with what the 49ers were looking to do. And then you bring in Nick Sorensen, who is not ready to do the job, just flat out. And I think now the players are kind of like, hey, can we get somebody in here to properly run this defense? There's too many talented players for the defense to be as bad as it was, certainly in the Super Bowl, at the end of the Super Bowl and into this year. So I think that Robert Saleh being back would be a pretty significant lift on that side of the ball.
Yeah, there were two teams that I remember thinking about this when the season began, when I was going through all of the previews and everything, and that I was not sure about, and that was San Francisco's and Baltimore's defensive hires, because it just appeared to me that there were so many coaches that had just been leaving that you keep doing that, and then sooner or later you're just going to hire someone that's just not qualified, and that's kind of what happened with both teams. Now Dean Pease comes in and kind of saves everything in Baltimore, because that was a disaster early on this season. But that was just something interesting, and there's nothing you could do about that when you're a really good coached organization at certain spots, and they just keep stealing your coaches. It's not easy to replace them one after another. And to get Salah, to get two Ryans and Salah back to back. Come on. You can't expect a third one like that. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and that's where I think they went wrong last offseason. I don't think they had much of a plan after letting go of Wilkes. And what they need to do, if it's Jeff Ulbrich, Robert Saleh, Dennis Allen, or otherwise, whoever the DC is, Kyle Shanahan and the coaching staff need to identify who's next. Because that's what they did with D'Amico Ryans. D'Amico Ryans got on the coaching staff at in 2017 as a defensive quality control or an assistant linebackers coach or whatever he did, and then was a linebackers coach who everybody around the team knew that D'Amico Ryans was the DC when Robert Saleh left. He didn't have any coordinator experience, but he had been preparing for that, and he'd been being groomed for that to move into that position. If it is Robert Saleh or whoever else, they need to identify that guy and start getting that guy ready, because you have to assume that Robert Saleh is going to get another chance of being ahead.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you don't want to be left holding the bag once again.
100%. You're right. If Saleh gets the job, he may only be there a year. So, okay, let's get into the needs. So it's up to you if you want to go in order or just throw darts at a wall, and then we'll order it after that. I'll let you start whichever way you'd like to go.
I'll just kind of do them in order here on the fly. Okay. Number one need, off-season need.
Off-season need.
So for me, you can. I'm going to go 1A, 1B. It's defensive line is 1A for me. And offensive line is 1B. And I host a radio show in Northern California, and whenever we talk about this, people are like, offensive line, you need an offensive line. And I understand that, and I totally get it. They do need to overhaul their offensive line. Aaron Banks at left guard is a free agent and not a player I think they're going to pay.
Yeah, we didn't talk about him. Yeah, you don't. So he's another one you think they won't want to pay?
Yeah, probably not. He wasn't great this year, and if he's super cheap, maybe they just bring him back. But they, at the very least, need to bring in competition there. Jake Brendel, the center, had a bad year. He's inexpensive. The center position is so important in the 49ers offense for what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. That finding an upgrade there is pivotal. Colton McKivitz at right tackle was better this year, but you can still upgrade there. So I understand wanting to upgrade the offensive line. They definitely need to do that. But the defensive line is just so imperative to what they want to do defensively. I don't think their philosophy is going to change. I don't think their scheme is going to change. So you have to get better personnel. That's just flat out. They need better players up front. We can talk analytics. We can talk scheme. We can do all 22. We can do all that. But football, at the end of the day, you want better players than the other team. And right now, the 49ers don't have that. They are outmatched on the defensive line week in and week out, save for Nick Bosa. So that's where I think, given how imperative that specific unit is to their defense, I think that has to be the 1A, because you can get by with a patchwork offensive line. We've seen them do it before. You cannot get by with a bad defensive line, flat out.
And that's both positions, inside and out.
Yeah. Defensive tackle, defensive end, doesn't matter. They just need depth there. They need better players to be able to rotate in and out. And if they do that, I think you don't need Robert Saleh to have a better defense next year. I think you'd be in a good spot either way. But if your defensive line stinks and you're not stopping the run and you're letting teams get into 2nd and 3 or 3rd and 1 on every series, you're going to have a really hard time getting off the field. And that's what we saw with the Niners this year.
All right. That's 1A and 1B.
Yeah. And then after that, I'm looking at linebacker. That's the that's the spot that also really killed them this year. Devondre Campbell was not great, definitely past his prime, and the lack of athleticism in the second level killed them. D. Winters going to be a third-year player from TCU. He flashed a couple of times this year, but I don't know if he's ready to just plug and play and be the will linebackers on the field for 3 downs. Maybe it's Dre Greenlaw. Maybe he's back and fully healthy and playing great. But if it's not, they have to figure out who's going to play next to Fred Warner, because it can't be a rotating cast. They have to solidify that. It's a big reason their defense was so good through the early part of the Kyle Shanahan era, because it was Fred Warner, and for a spell it was Quan Alexander, and then it was Dre Greenlaw, and the athleticism there, taking away those easy throws in the middle of the field that modern offenses really thrive on.
Yeah,
just made things a lot easier for their defense. So that's the one that really jumps out to me, aside from the defensive line on the defensive side of the ball. And then offensively, they need to the 49ers have to figure out what they're doing at tight end. George Kittle's still great. George Kittle is having this second prime that I did not think he was going to have. But after that, like, Eric Saubert is their number tight end. Like he's an NFL player, but he can't. If George Kittle's out, the 49ers don't have any production from tight end. Braden Willis, not projecting to be a rotation player or a viable NFL starting tight end. And Jake Tunges, same kind of deal. If maybe he, one of those two guys, Willis or Tunges, has a huge training camp and really breaks out. But for me, the Niners have to use real draft capital on a tight end that they think can either run with Kittle in multiple tight end sets, or adequately spell him if Kittle is out, where the Niners offense doesn't fall apart when number 85 is sidelined, which is kind of what tends to happen. So they've needed to figure that out for several years now. And it's been on my list of 49ers preseason needs for several years now, and it's still way up there.
It feels like the Chiefs. I've been saying the same thing about the Chiefs. Like, when are they going to draft someone to take over for Travis Kelce? Mm-hmm. And then he just kept coming back anyway and kept producing. And so I guess they know what they're doing. But then finally they did do that in this last draft. They added someone that's got potential and might be able to take over. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense that the Niners need to be in that situation as well. So maybe this is the year. And by the way, if you don't know yet, this class is going to be outstanding for tight ends. Not just
a Ty Warren guy.
Yeah, not just, and again, we know how good he can be, but even, I mean, you're going 10, 15 deep the entire draft of quality potential players that, I'm not saying all 15 will be good, but if you hit the right guy, these guys have production at the college level, and it's just a matter of, which ones that you pick that actually work out. So yeah, this is a really good class for tight ends. So
great to know.
Yeah, this would be the year. Also the same thing with running backs. It's going to be an awesome year depth-wise for running backs. Not sure running back is where San Francisco needs to go, whether or not they just have to stay healthy in the running back room. But
somebody is going to have to. That's the other thing, real quick, on the running backs. Jordan Mason, restricted free agent. I'm guessing they go second-round tender on him. It's like $5.2 million. It's a pretty significant raise for him. And a lot for a number 2 running back. But given their injury situation with Christian McCaffrey and Isaac Orendo, as good as Jordan Mason was when McCaffrey was out, you got to find a way to get him back. But yeah, somebody is going to have to put Kyle Shanahan in a straitjacket when the number 11 pick comes up and Ashton Genty is on the board.
Yeah, right.
They cannot, as much as I love Ashton Genty, they cannot let Kyle Shanahan pick a running back in the first round.
Yeah, it's he is going to be really good. And again, it's there's some awesome talent, and I know how tough it's going to be, but I think the fans are probably, the fans love those skill position players. So they'll be happy.
Riots. There would be riots if they took
would there really? Okay.
Oh my God, yes.
So they're totally against running backs at San Francisco. Okay.
Yeah, just their history of swinging and missing on him in the draft, and then having all these needs in the trenches and a tight end and a linebacker, and they go with a running back where when healthy, that running back room is already stacked.
And
that'd be tough.
The other thing too is, and I think maybe we're at that point, is that I think we are going to now finally start to see, I think we've already been in that, maybe this is the year, is that we're starting to move back slowly to the running game again, and to understand how important it is to have a really good running game. And I think that so if there's a year that you can see the running backs in this draft really mean something, and we're already seeing it with a lot of the teams that are still alive, even in the postseason right now. So, but San Francisco had all those injuries, and by the way, that is another thing that just kills this team. It seems like that's like one unit that just, it's like every other year at least. It's like not one guy goes down, but it's like the entire unit goes down.
So check this out. This is going to be I use the term fun, tongue in cheek here. So let's look at our lads' depth chart here. Okay, let's go to left tackle. By the end of the year, by week 18, Trent Williams gone. This is this season. Trent Williams out with an ankle injury. Jalen Moore, the backup left tackle, out. Aaron Banks, the starting left guard, out. Spencer Burford, the backup left guard, out. Ben Barch, the other left guard, out. John Feliciano was on IR, out. Colton McKivitz was dealing with an injury in week 18. He was out. That's 7 offensive linemen they had out in week 18.
That is nuts.
That's outrageous. It was ridiculous, dude. It's
one of those things too, where you take a look at teams like the Chiefs, with the run they're making, and you know what? They have Patrick Mahomes. They've got a great coaching staff. I'm not taking anything away from them, and they have their share of injuries, but they don't have like the rash of injuries that some of these other teams have. I mean, this is going on 5 or 6 years now. They've never had to deal with any of that stuff.
Yeah, it hasn't seemed like it. Honestly, the Lions have this year, and they somehow keep winning.
Yep.
That's an incredible group.
Just imagine being a Lions fan after all these years, and you finally have a Super Bowl caliber team, and injuries start to occur.
I hate it so much for them. I'd love to see them overcome it. That'd be a great story, but history tells us that a team as banged up as them is gonna run into a ceiling here at some point.
Yeah, and I could see them getting to the Super Bowl, but I have a hard time expecting. How can they win without Hutchinson and McNeil? It's like, and Davis,
like
Davis.
They've been figuring it out. And who's the rookie? Terrion Arnold's out too.
He's coming back this week, I think.
Oh, is he? Oh, okay, good.
And their linebacker came back this last week.
Alex Anzalone, yeah.
So that's good, but
like you said, any team missing players the caliber of Aleem McNeil and Aiden Hutchinson would be toast.
Yeah.
On top of all the peripheral injuries that they have, it's amazing they've made it this far.
Yeah, it's interesting. The AFC and the NFC, it was interesting because this year the NFC was more deep as far as those teams, like especially from 5 to 10 or something. And the AFC, though, not so deep, but where they're stronger is like their top 3 or 4 teams. The NFC just doesn't have that right now, especially this season, especially with Detroit's injuries. They just don't have, but you got Buffalo, you got Kansas City, you got Baltimore. I mean, it's just that's just a really tough. Any of those teams get to the Super Bowl, they can win it. Whereas in the NFC, I just don't know if anybody can win it except Detroit.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how Philly looks against the Rams. I've been kind of a big Philly guy since about week 9 this year, and you just kind of started watching them, and you go, "Are they the best team in the NFC?"
They kind of look like that. They got to that point. Yep, they did.
And so I can't wait to watch them against the Rams this weekend, because if they really kind of put it on the Rams, I think the NFC title game could be a ton of fun.
All right, so need number 5.
Man, I should have split up the defensive line into 2 positions. Safety, they got to figure out the safety spot.
Okay.
If we're just going defensive line, offensive line, and not going specific positions.
Yeah.
Hufanga's a free agent. Mustafa's a good player. I think Mustafa's a starting caliber player, but Jair Brown, huge question mark about what he is moving forward. George Odom's a special teams guy. Tayshaun Gibson is older than I am. It's just not a loaded group. And so I think whether it's a veteran or whether it's using another draft pick, they gotta find at the very least some depth at safety, assuming that Talanoa Hufanga's gone. So I'll say that.
Okay, now we went over a lot of those injuries. So let me ask you: are there any like players that were injured not the household names, but some players that might be injured that could take over and start at a certain position or two that maybe the casual fan is not aware of?
Ooh, okay, I'll throw out a deep cut here for you.
Okay.
I wouldn't bet on this, but he just kind of fits the mold. And that's Drake Jackson.
Oh,
the former second round pick. He might just be done. There's a chance that he's like not even on the offseason roster. Like that's on the table. But former second round pick who never really broke out. And this was supposed to be the year he got hurt in 2023. And this is supposed to be the year that he came back and he had surgery in the offseason. He's supposed to be ready for training camp. And this is going to be his year to really break out, at least as a rotational defensive end. And then he never even made it to camp because he had some kind of setback, I believe, with his injury. So Drake Jackson's an interesting one because their feelings on him could kind of dictate how they go about attacking the defensive end position in the offseason.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but that's definitely a guy.
If he can stay healthy, obviously, that's the deal.
Yeah, which I'm not going to bank on at this point.
Yeah.
But we're on the defensive depth chart right now, and that's the name that jumps out to me. Can we scroll up to the offense real quick and see if there's nobody on the offensive side jumps out to me that fits that bill. So yeah, I'll throw Drake Jackson in the mix and call it good.
Okay, so
names.
Well, I'll pose this question because I know Jalen Moore was hurt. So let's just say, all right, Trent Williams. First of all, let's start with Trent there. Is Trent Williams, what's your guess? Is he coming back?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do they have his replacement on the roster? Do they have any young players on the roster? Or no, that's why they have to add one.
Yeah. Like Jalen Moore, I'm guessing they'll re-sign on the cheap. And he's fine as a swing tackle.
Okay.
But because he played left tackle at Western Michigan. And when they drafted him, he's super undersized. And the prevailing thought was he would go in and play guard. And that switch just never happened because of some injury stuff and him having to play left tackle in camp and all this. So he's just kind of stuck there as a swing tackle. He's not a long-term replacement for Trent Williams. Like, God love him. He's a fine backup tackle, but he's not going to be your starting left tackle long-term. And anybody besides maybe Ben Barch, the left guard, the third string left guard here on the depth chart. He ended up starting for Banks in week, I think it was 14, and turned his ankle. He had a high ankle sprain. They really like him, and so maybe he sneaks in and grabs a starting job as the left guard out of camp. So that'll be something to watch.
Yeah, anybody that comes from St. John's in Minnesota needs several years to develop. So.
Yeah, but he's an athletic guy. He's got a ton of size. Like I said, I know they really like him, but like you said, he definitely needs some development.
Well, the good thing is he's been around a while now, so maybe he is ready. Maybe this is the time. So
yeah, got years of Niners now for sure.
Okay, so Purdy. Can't let you go without talking about Purdy. A lot of people outside of San Francisco are wondering whether or not the Niners believe he is their future quarterback. He's their guy. What's going on there? He's
going to be their quarterback.
Okay.
Keep in mind, let me couch this. This is baked into the take. Anything is always possible in the NFL. Like my buddy Nick Wagner, who covers the 49ers for ESPN, always says, like, never say never. Like weird things happen all the time. So my guess is the way I'm strongly leaning is that Brock Purdy is back with the 49ers on a deal that's at or near the top of the quarterback market. And if the 49ers are smart, they'll get that deal done by like before free agency. Get it out of the way, get that easy offseason win, and move forward into 2025, knowing that your franchise quarterback is locked in. I know there's a lot of discussion about Purdy and how good he is, and does he deserve X, Y, or Z dollars? And that's a discussion that can be had for sure. But I think what needs to be understood in those discussions is that what I think, or what you think, or what anybody listening to this thinks about Brock Purdy, is, it matters in the course of this discussion. Everybody can have their opinion, but the fact of the matter is Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch love Brock Purdy.
That's all that matters.
They are all in on him. They're not going to go like, okay, well, we're all in, but only at like $30 million a year. No, he's gonna get a deal probably in the $50 to $60 million range. And I'm actually working on a piece for NinersWire.com right now where the dollar amount matters less to me than when it gets done. A $60 million deal that gets signed in March is far preferable to a $45 million a year deal that gets signed in late July.
Sure.
Where Purdy's holding out, and now it's a question, and is Kirk Cousins coming in? Is it this? And now you're back to where you were at the start of last year, where it's just tumultuous going into the year. So whatever it is, it's going to be a high dollar amount. There's going to be people saying he's not that good, and maybe he's not. Like I genuinely, I have questions about whether he's a guy who can carry a team too, but the 49ers love him. They believe in him. They're going to pay him. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, he's one of those quarterbacks, and we bring it up all the time whenever we say things like, he's one of those quarterbacks that if you surround him with a really good team, he can win a Super Bowl for you, but he can't carry you.
Yeah.
And Brock Purdy is one of those guys, and there's nothing wrong with that because there's a lot of guys who can't win a Super Bowl no matter how much talent is surrounding him. And he proved it last year when he almost won the Super Bowl. If the defense makes a stand, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, man. And this is a thing that's really important to keep in mind too. There's like 3 tiers of quarterback, right? There's the lowest tier, which is like you could give this guy 52 Hall of Famers in their primes and you're not winning with them.
Yeah.
Like bottom line, bad player. Then there's the tier of that I think Brock Purdy is in, where, you got to surround him with some talent, but he's capable of winning you a Super Bowl. And the fact of the matter is that's where way more quarterbacks are than tier 1, which is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Pick your top quarterbacks. The guys who you're just like, oh yeah, by that guy being on the field, that team's a Super Bowl contender, is so short. It's like 5 guys at the absolute maximum. So Purdy falls into the second bucket for me pretty comfortably. And okay, the Niners might need to surround him with some talent, but that's what you have a front office for. Like you don't sign a quarterback and then go, oh, okay, good, we can get bad players now. Like, no, you still got to surround him with good players.
Yeah,
for sure. But that was going to be the case whether he signs for $60 million a year or $6 million a year.
Are they right now? Both backups are free agents. Do they just bring them back, or do they need to find maybe even a long-term backup, or maybe even someone that could eventually develop as a just in case kind of guy?
Yeah, it sounds like Josh Dobbs is gone.
Okay.
I think he's probably out of here. I don't know if he wants a starting gig or if he wasn't the backup all year. He was QB3 on more days than not. So I don't know if he wants to go where he'll be the surefire QB2, and maybe the 49ers can offer that for him. Brandon Allen, I don't know. Maybe they just love having him around. He's been in the system a couple of years, and they don't want to rock the boat too much, and they just bring him back on the cheap. Maybe, but I'm with you. They need to develop somebody. I forget the undrafted quarterback. Tanner Mordecai is his name. An undrafted guy who was on their practice squad this year. Maybe Tanner Mordecai is a player that they liked what they saw, and he's the long-term option. But yeah, maybe I think they draft somebody to be the third QB this year. That's kind of where I'm leaning.
Yeah, and there's some there going to be some options, and I mean one right off the bat is Dylan Gabriel. There are going to be guys out there that are going to be drafted rounds 4, 5, 6, 7 that have had really good college careers, sort of like Brock Purdy. that maybe a guy like that will fit in our system in the same way Purdy did, and we don't have to spend big on him early in the draft, and we can develop him and take our time with him. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so before I let you go, then lastly, special teams how's the situation there? Punter, kicker?
Yeah, my guess is Jake Moody, at the very least, has competition in the offseason. I don't think Kyle Shanahan was thrilled with how his season went. I think he missed 10 kicks. His field goal percentage was the lowest field goal percentage by a kicker with at least 34 attempts since 2012. It was really bad. And oddly enough, that 2012 kicker was David Akers, who was with the 49ers at the time. So I don't think you can bring him back just
giving it to him
sight unseen. Yeah, because sight unseen wasn't the phrase I was looking for. You can't just bring him back with no competition. Just like, yep, here, this is your job. If for no other reason, then he missed his first couple of kicks in the preseason his rookie year. They drafted him in the top 100. He misses his first couple of kicks, so people are already out. Then he misses his first game-winning kick. Then he gets an extra point blocked in the Super Bowl. Then he has a horrendous second year. Jake Moody could go 40 for 40 next year on field goals. And he could roll out in the Super Bowl to kick a field goal and everybody would be nervous.
Yeah, I hear you.
And that's just a lot of pressure to kind of deal with. So I think that they bring in some competition for him. I don't know if they cut him outright, but I think they bring in competition there. And then Mitch Wishnowsky had a back injury this year that they sat him for most of the season. My guess is he's back as the punter.
All right. And the returning situation's okay? Their kick return game?
Yeah, I think they like having Jacob Cowing do that. Isaac Guerrero can do it a little bit. Deebo Samuel did some kick returning this year. That'll be I think probably a by committee thing until they find a player that they're super comfortable with.
And it's unfortunate that we don't really get to spend a whole lot of time anymore on kick returners and such. They've really screwed around with that.
Yep. Yeah, Kyle Shanahan wants to spend as little energy as possible worrying about something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Kyle, awesome job as always. Once again, yes, if anything major happens, we'll reach out, of course. But if not, then we will look forward to talking to you after the draft. And again, we're going to have links in the description for everything that viewers can find out about you if they've never heard of you before, especially if you're a San Francisco 49ers fan. And anyway, really looking forward to it. It's going to be another great offseason for the NFL. What else is new? And of course, a much different offseason for 49ers fans after what they experienced last offseason. So Kyle, great job as always. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you always.